Wonderful. Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you to Lauren and the whole Crohn's and Colitis Club for inviting me to speak. I'm so honored and happy to be here. And I think the fact that you're all here, you already should give yourself a big pat on the back and recognize the large step that you're taking to, take an active role in your own health. On a Monday evening with Zoom, the fact that you're here, I think that, you should really applaud yourself, particularly to talk about some things that are difficult to talk about and difficult for us to acknowledge in ourselves. Both IBD and mental health are both incredibly stigmatized, and they tend to go together. The vast majority of people with inflammatory bowel disease do experience mental health challenges. And at least I felt during my care, like I said, I was diagnosed at 17 and at the end of high school, and then was in university and undergrad experiencing an incredibly difficult time, not only with my physical health, but also with my mental health. And I didn't necessarily feel like the mental health issues were being addressed or like I knew where to turn for them. So I think that this has kind of become my passion, and I'm just looking forward to sharing this with you. I titled my talk Breaking the Vicious Cycle because that's how I tend to think about these topics, and the way that IBD and mental health can kind of conflate and bring us into this really dark place, and how we can start to bring ourselves out, which we really do have a lot of control and power over. So as I said at the beginning, my background is in education and in health coaching and yoga and meditation teacher. And so I've kind of combined all these elements and really work with people holistically to heal that mind-body connection. So I lead lots of group workshops and yoga and meditation classes, speaking, writing, but all of my work stems from the fact that, like I said, I have this lived experience. And I think that as patients, we have such valuable information about ourselves, about our health, and about this illness, and we should feel empowered as our own healers, and really acknowledge the information and the insight that we have into ourselves as patients. I always say with people, like, I'm not the expert. I meet people where they are, and I help them understand how they can heal themselves. And I think in any illness, but with IBD, particularly at this time when we can feel so isolated and so kind of like we don't have a lot of control in our lives, I think recognizing the power that we do have is incredible and is so healing. And oftentimes, we can go to these experts for help and they can help support us, but ultimately so much of this does come from ourselves and the actions that we do every day to heal ourselves and each other. So like I said, I always saw this as like this completely vicious cycle, that once you are told that you are facing a chronic illness that has no cure, that you don't know when your flares are going to hit, it's uncertain, it's unpredictable, and it can be devastating for us, let alone all the pain and fatigue and physical symptoms we're feeling, but also just, again, that emotional impact. Thinking about the embarrassment of this illness when we can feel like we have a lack of control of our bowels, the way that it wreaks havoc on our body image, particularly in this day and age when so many of us are dealing with the issues of body image and the way that we're portraying ourselves on social media and all that comparison and awful stuff that happens. Like, put on top of this being on a steroid, right? Put on top of this all the body image issues of having an ostomy, which I had, being on steroids, which I was on. I like totally understand how difficult this can be. A lot of fear and anxiety around our sexuality, around feeling like we need to be isolated, around feeling like we have to depend on others, and this huge concern about not reaching our full potential, right? Like, this is the time in your life when you're trying to figure out who you are, and you might have all these dreams and all these goals and all these ambitions for the future, and having a diagnosis thrown on you can feel like it's completely putting this huge roadblock in between you and what you wanted. I know that's how I felt. And this the reason that I'm explaining all this is because I just want you to understand that you're not alone in this if you are dealing with these things. The statistics that I've seen are up to 80–90% of people with IBD experience these emotional impacts. It's totally normal, not only for people with IBD, but even lots of people without IBD to be tackling these issues at this time in our life. It's a hard time. And then that fear of stigmatization. We are so afraid to be stigmatized as people with chronic illness. We feel like somehow marked, potentially, at least I did. Like now there's something wrong with me that I can't fix, and that makes me different than other people, that makes me less than other people. And that stigma that I felt on myself really led me to disconnect and isolate from lots of people, particularly when I was in undergrad. And that can be so detrimental and keep us in this downward spiral. So the mental health challenges in IBD can be very overwhelming, right? We all have a mental health. A mental health includes our psychological, emotional, and social health, and can impact the way we think, impact the way we feel, and impact the way we act. So I talked a lot about these other things. Sometimes this illness is accompanied with with depression, with anxiety, with an eating disorder. I actually started feeling these mental health issues prior to my diagnosis, and they just got exacerbated once I was diagnosed. And then there's a lot of feelings that can come up. We can be in denial. We can go through fear, disgust, lack of hope, loneliness, shame, grief. And it's just about acknowledging these emotions and understanding, kind of normalizing and sitting with ourselves and really being compassionate towards ourselves that you are going through a potentially very difficult time. You are not to blame for this illness. And it's really important for us to begin by kind of laying out what this can do to us, not only physically, but also mentally and emotionally, so that we can start to understand the full picture of what we're dealing with, so that we can start to heal ourselves from an integrative, holistic perspective. Because only focusing on the physical is, sometimes it can make us feel like we're crazy, because we're like, wait, but there's all this other stuff going on, right? And maybe it's not being spoken about, but it's very real and it's very difficult. So with that being said, I think that anytime I talk about these things, or anytime I listen to other people talk about inflammatory bowel disease or about mental health, like it can bring up a lot of emotions, right? And mindfulness is really the foundation of how I have found healing for myself and how I work with others to help heal. Because ultimately in this disease, it's very easy for us to have this anxiety, this fear of the future, this fear of what we're going to achieve, and this always looking forward or looking back, what I've lost, you know, who I was before this illness hit me. And so mindfulness is about bringing us to this present moment, right? It's simple, because it's essentially just paying attention, telling ourselves that we are going to take this time to pay attention. We're doing it on purpose. We're doing it right here, and we're letting go of judgment. Whatever comes up, we're not going to judge. And like I said, it's a simple practice, but it's not an easy practice, right? Because there's a lot of barriers in ourselves towards sitting still. We don't necessarily want to face how we're feeling. We don't necessarily want to face the reality of what's happening. We don't necessarily want to feel the pain in our belly. We don't want to necessarily acknowledge the fact that we're dealing with this. And that's okay, but sometimes it's about like sitting with our body, sitting with our breath, and just connecting with ourselves that can allow us to kind of move forward, right? So I would really recommend looking into mindfulness practice. I mean, you know, I offer yoga and mindfulness classes, pay what you can. There's lots of free apps, lots of resources out there. So dedicating yourself to some sort of practice where you're able to kind of shut off all the technology and just sit with yourself. And, you know, just focus on the breath and focus on your inhale and your exhale. just being here with your breath and recognizing that all the things that have gone wrong with your body and all the things that, you know, might be going wrong in your life or in the world, we have our breath. And as John Kabat-Zinn says, he's one of my mentors and heroes, he says, as long as we're breathing, there's more right with us than there is wrong with us. And sometimes that's all we can do, is just recognize that we're breathing. Sometimes all we can do is recognize that our feet are touching the ground, recognize our relationship to gravity, recognize that we're being held, right? And there's these simple practices that every day, if we build, we can really start to bring that circle up. So when I was putting together this presentation, I was thinking, what do I wish that I knew? What do I wish that somebody would have told me at this time? And what are the things that I continue to have to tell myself to help myself heal? The first thing I want to say is that you are not to blame for this illness. This illness is multifaceted. There are lots of factors that play into why some people are diagnosed more than others. There's lots of theories being thrown around. Regardless, nobody chooses to be ill. Nobody causes themselves to be ill on purpose. And a lot of us blame ourselves. I blame myself for a long, long time. And the blame is very linked to that self-stigma. We are going to stigmatize ourselves if we blame ourselves for our illness, right? And when we're trying to manage our stress, it's like it can be, again, this cycle, this vicious cycle, when we cause ourselves stress or we're in a stressful situation and then we blame ourselves for being in that stress, and then we get a flare and then we blame ourselves for being in the flare, and it's like we can't get out of it. So can you try to recognize that you are doing the best you can, you know, that you are facing something difficult and that you have the control and power to do everything you can to improve your health, and that there are some things that are out of our control, right? And so you are not to blame. You are not a series of disconnected body parts. Sometimes when you are a patient, when you go to lots of doctor's visits, when you go to lots of hospital visits, you can start to see yourself as your gastrointestinal tract, or as, you know, if you go to a psychiatrist, your brain. And we start to forget that all of these things are connected, that we are more than these body parts, that we are more than our disease, and that all of these things interconnect and affect one another. Our gut is our second brain, right? There's all these connections happening. And so just remembering, and I think that's why mindfulness and yoga are so integral, and why I focus on them so much, is because they allow us to feel and remember the wholeness of our being, you know, beyond these parts that we hyper focus on when we go to the doctor. You are not alone. There are so many people living through what you're living through, and there are so many people in university that might seem like they're the life of the party, that might seem like they're having the best time, and they're also dealing with something, right? I isolated myself because I thought, since all these other people don't have IBD, they don't know what they don't know how to help me, and I was so ashamed of my illness that I completely separated myself from people. And it's only after school when I talk to people and they say, yeah, like I was really struggling with this. I was really struggling with an addiction. I was really struggling with another health issue. Like we all have so many struggles, and it's amazing and so healing for us to connect with like-minded people, connect with fellow members of Crohn's and Colitis Canada, so you can understand the IBD level, but then to also recognize that we all are placed with challenges, and we can really connect versus separate ourselves based on our challenges and based on the resilience that we can all bring each other to work through those challenges. You are so much more than a patient, and sometimes just writing down or focusing on those things about yourself that are not as a patient, your strengths, your values, what you do for people, what you do for yourself, what you're into, like just keeping those in mind is really helpful to break away from that patient, passive, victim identity that can kind of bring us down to that vicious cycle. You are strong, you are whole, you are healing, you are worthy, you are enough, you are all of these things. And sometimes we just have to tell ourselves that until we start to believe it. So, breaking free of the vicious cycle. The thing is, there are lots of things that interrelate that can bring us down. The good news is that there are lots of things that interrelate that can start to bring us up. So if we implement one new routine, one new practice into our life, we can really see the cumulative positive effects of that building. The first most important thing is to let go of perfectionism. What I've found working with people with IBD is that we tend to be perfectionists. We tend to be people who are always trying to help others, are people pleasers, want to do well, want to be well, tend to stress ourselves out by overburdening ourselves. And this illness can kind of teach us to let go of that. And that is easier said than done. I'm still continuing to work on letting go of perfectionism. When we let go of trying to be perfect, we can be ourselves. We can be whoever we are, and we can recognize that people will love and support us for exactly who we are. So we really want to think about seeking an integrative set of supports, right? With us in the center. We're not looking at experts to heal us and to fix all our problems. We are the center, and we are choosing the supports that best serve us. Of course, we have our gastroenterologist. Maybe we have a psychotherapist or some sort of mental health support. Maybe we're doing some sort of movement and meditation practice. There's so many different kinds of yoga and kinds of meditation. I think self-compassion and gratitude practices are so beneficial for us, in addition to peer support. Peer support, sometimes on the internet, especially, I find, can veer a little negative and a little scary sometimes. So really check in with yourself. Are the things that I'm engaging with giving me power, giving me energy, giving me hope, or drawing it away from me? And recognize that you can choose where you put your energy. And then exploring your connection to spirituality. That isn't necessarily something that a doctor will feel comfortable talking to you about, but I think that I know that's been really helpful for me. So kind of just exploring if you're interested in spirituality. I think that sometimes the wounds of a chronic illness can hit us also in that spiritual realm. Sometimes we have to redefine what our life means, what our definition of success is. So I really invite you to potentially explore that other side of things. And then connecting with creativity. And allowing creative means to be a way to feel and express the emotions, and to kind of get in touch with what's going on inside us and connect deeper and feel that compassion and connection with, our body that needs some support from us right now, right? And always. So whether it's painting or drawing or journaling or dancing or singing or listening to music or playing an instrument, I wrote improv because improv over the last year has helped me so much to just like meet a group of people who had no idea that I was ill, and to just laugh with them, to overcoming fears in improv that I found like so beneficial. So just finding ways to express and heal and create and have fun, right? Just remembering again that we are so much more than that patient. And then I think taking like a really good look at our relationships. And it can sound obvious, surround yourself with people that you enjoy, but sometimes we forget that. So yeah, I mean, we don't have the energy, especially as people with chronic illness, to surround ourselves with people that are drawing energy from us, right? And you deserve to be surrounded by people that are pushing you up, that are uplifting you, that are giving and receiving as much as you are. So really checking in with those relationships and recognizing that we call relationships toxic and healthy for a reason. They can improve our health, and they can be a drag on our health and our well-being. So thank you so much. That's just like a little bit of what I wanted to share today. Here's a little bit of some resources that I used. I liked this little quote to just remember that maybe you're on a difficult road right now. Maybe it's leading to the most beautiful destination, right? And I would love to stay in touch with all of you. I would love to send you a copy of this presentation or talk to you about different resources that might help you. So please get in touch through Instagram, my website, my email, and I'd love to chat further. Thank you all so much, and be well.